The following program is brought to you in part by the film Backdoor Channels, The Price of Peace.
Welcome to another Leon Charney Report, and we are in Jerusalem, Israel, on top of Mount Scopus at the Hebrew University. And we are going to talk with Professor Yair Zakovitch, who is a renowned scholar in Bible, something I think that's very important because they call this the Holy Land. We'll find out how holy it is from the eminent professor. Those of you who know a lot about Israel understand that Israel's fairly well divided today between the secularist and the religious. And perhaps we'll get some insight from Professor Zakovitch as to how to sort of combine the two and make this place function possibly a little better, because at times the cabinet and the different factions sort of interrupt one another. And though the land functions very well, I guess there could be some improvement. Professor, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
You are basically a secularist, is that correct?
Well, if you have to put a label on my forehead, yes, I am one.
No, you label it. Tell me what you are.
I'm a Jew, and I don't like labels.
Okay. What is a Jew?
What is a Jew? A person who knows Jewish culture, who likes his Jewish culture, who feels it's important to share his Jewish culture with his fellow Jews.
And is this a holy land to you?
It is my land, and since it's my land, it's a holy one, yeah.
So you have a dispute, I guess, between the Orthodox, or the, not a dispute, but
a conflict.
A conflict between the Orthodox and, let's say, the secularist. But you're still very strongly involved with the Bible. Why?
Because the Bible is my heritage. Since I remember myself, since I was a kid, I used to carry a Bible with me. I used to read the Bible all the time. And I think it's the greatest piece of literature ever written. And the more I read it, the more I discover there. And I feel that every Jew should know his or her Bible, because if we all know our sources, not just the Bible, but also the literature that was written afterwards, interpretations of the Bible, I think that if we all know our heritage, know our literature, then we'll have a common world of associations, a common memory or a collective memory that we can all share. What makes me an Israeli Jew and you an American Jew brothers? It's our common world of association. It's the common language, common Jewish language you speak. Even if you speak English and I speak Hebrew, we still have a Jewish language that we share.
Okay, but our cousins are the Arabs, correct? From the Bible, you would read that.
I don't know if they are our cousins or not, but they are our neighbors, and we have to find a way to live with them peacefully.
Is the Bible a holy book?
It's a question, what do you mean by holy? And I'm not going to ask you what you do mean by saying it's a holy book, but of course, that's the dearest book for us. For some people, it's divine, you know, it's a divine word that came down from heaven. For people like me, it's a book written by human beings. But still, it's a book that has been written over a period of about 1,000 years. People started writing it, let's say, 1000 BCE, and kept writing it, and then kept reading it and interpreting it and always preserving it. So in a way, it's a holy book, yeah.
You and I spoke before we went on television. You're a very strong Zionist. Does the Bible have any relationship to Zionism?
Zionism has a strong relationship to the Bible. Of course, when you read the Bible, since the book of Genesis, you know, the stories about Abraham being told by God to to go to the Holy Land, and when he gets here, he gets all these promises, and also the patriarchs that follow Abraham get all these promises that that's going to be their land. And even when they go, you know, in exile, they still long for the land of Israel, and they get back to the land of Israel and try to build the temple again and the country again. So, of course, yeah, as a Zionist, of course, my book is the Bible. And look, when Ben-Gurion and his guys actually founded the state of Israel, for them, again, the Bible was the most important book. Ben-Gurion saw himself as, I believe, as like a new David, a prophet, or a new David, and his name was David. So, and by the way, it's very funny because, you know, when Ben-Gurion ended being a prime minister and he went down to the Negev to stay Boker, for a while he was a shepherd, like young David. So, yeah.
You know, you live in this country, and it's really fascinating. You have people like you, and then last week we interviewed Rabbi Ravitz, and the week before maybe a half-secularist and maybe a Ergunist. The goulash in this country is fantastic, which I'm sure is what makes it interesting. Do you find a distinct difference in the way the Sephardic Jews and the Ashkenazi Jews accept the Bible?
It depends what Sephardic Jews we are talking about. Of course, if we are talking about secular Jews, there is no difference. If we are talking about...
Let's say the Shas party and a national religious party.
Oh, if we're talking... Well, it's... The Shas party is an ultra-Orthodox Sephardic party.
Right.
If you take the Agudat Yisrael or these people, we're talking about an ultra-Orthodox Ashkenazi party. There's almost no difference between these two ultra-Orthodox parties anymore, because the Sephardi Jews are not Sephardi Jews anymore when it comes to ultra-religion, because they get their education in like Lithuanian yeshivot. The way, look at the Shas people, how they dress now. They dress like East Europeans.
It's true.
So, but I like the Sephardi Jews in the pre-Shas period, because they were traditionalists, but they were not so fanatic like some Ashkenazi Jews.
What causes fanaticism?
I guess some people have this need of becoming fanaticists, of protecting themselves, protecting their worlds, building walls, you know.
Is it fear, you think?
I think it's fear, but I'm not a psychologist, and I don't understand this phenomenon, and unfortunately I don't like this phenomenon at all. I would have liked people to be free, to listen to their own inner voice, and not to be told by other parties, whether it's a rabbi or God or any other voice, what to do and what to follow.
If you go back in history, when the temple, Second Temple, was destroyed and the Romans really conquered the Jewish people, a lot of the Jewish people went to Babylonia, and then Babylonia took over by Greece, and there was a lot of Hellenistic culture that was integrated into to Judaism. You think that was pretty important, don't you?
Thank God, you know, we had some influence from other cultures. Look, we Jews have given the world a lot, and we have received from the world a lot, and that's the way for a culture to develop. You are influenced by another culture, you are challenged by another culture, you have to find your own answers, and it's true for our whole history. Look, if we get back to our roots in the biblical period, we in a way were Canaanites. Our roots are actually Canaanite, and from our Canaanite roots we have developed our own religion, our own culture, our monotheistic religion. And then later on, of course, we were influenced by the Greeks and by the Romans. And later on, being in the diaspora, being in Africa, being in Spain, we were also influenced by the Muslims. It's amazing. And now you can really trace all these influences in our culture, which makes our culture so very rich.
You know, it's really fascinating that had the Jewish people not created a Bible or a Torah, they probably wouldn't be here today. So there was brilliance in these rabbis. There's a story about Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was a rabbi in Jerusalem, right here, and Jerusalem was under siege. So he went to the emperor of Rome, and he told the emperor of Rome, you know, I know you're going to win. He predicted the win. I'd go through Bible stories. You're the Bible expert. But basically, he asked for a yeshiva in Yavne. That's what he wanted. And historically, people claim that this really saved Judaism. And maybe before that, Ezra, who was a scribe, he worked at the same time as Nehemiah, who was a governor. These people really were fundamental people who believed that they could save Judaism, because you had to understand that Judaism at that time was attached to a temple and the land. So are these people heroes in Judaism?
They are my heroes, of course, because these people understood that books are more important than territories.
And idol worship and different types
because if you study your heritage, if you study your book, you will exist. And the most important thing is that these people were not fundamentalists, actually.
Is that right?
Yeah. Because when you read rabbinic literature, or even when you read the Bible, you see that there is not one voice there. It's actually a great mosaic of so many different voices. People who agree with one another, people who don't agree with one another, people who polemicize against one another. Unfortunately, when I look at these fundamentalists nowadays, they believe that there is only one way, which is, of course, their way. And they are not open to the idea that...
Yeah, but they split amongst each other too.
Of course.
But I think the brilliance of Bible, or the Torah, was the flexibility.
Yeah.
They made it flexi-Torah, and that's how you had a Talmud, and you had a Mishnah.
I'll give you an example. Yeah, flexibility, that's actually the word. I'll give you an example. Flexibility of interpretation. Understanding that you have to find a way to interpret the Bible or the Torah in a way that will let you live your life. For instance, there is a law in the book of Deuteronomy against marrying Moabites or Ammonites.
Ruth was a Moabite.
And Ruth was a Moabite. How did they make it possible? Is the law in the Torah against it? Well, they interpreted it in a way that, well, Moabite men are not allowed to enter the community, but Moabite women are allowed. This way, they opened the gates and made it possible for all these foreign women to enter the Jewish people. It was great. So that's flexibility.
Who created monotheism?
Who knows? I believe it was a very long process. When you read biblical literature, you see it was not created over one day. Because there are many texts in the Bible that show you that, well, at the beginning, our God was the most important God. Let's say the head of the pantheon. And slowly, slowly, all other gods disappeared. They were degraded into like a lower level. They became like angels, and slowly, slowly, we developed this idea. It's a long, long process, and a very painful process, because you can still see, not only in the Bible, but inscriptions that have been found from like the First Temple period. You see that people still believe in Asherah. Why does the book of Deuteronomy, for instance, is so much against the Asherah? You should not plant an Asherah. Asherah is like a tree that represents a goddess. We should not plant an Asherah near the God's altar, because people did believe in the Asherah. Asherah, who was Asherah? Was she like God's wife? Who knows? Yeah, so it was a long process.
How did one become a prophet?
I haven't tried to become one yet, and if I do try, I think they'll put me in a lunatic house.
Sanitarium.
In the sanitarium. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that people just, first of all, you need the right environment. In an environment and in a period that there were many prophets, it was not strange for one to become a prophet. I do believe that people, some people believe that they know what the divine message is, what they have to transmit to the people. But the interesting thing about prophets, and that's something that not many people don't quite understand. They believe that, well, prophets are just some great instruments for delivering the divine word, the way they hear it, the way they transmit it, which is not true, of course, because if you read biblical prophecy, you see that all prophets are actually great writers, great poets.
Probably get great speakers too.
Great orators, of course, definitely. And also great writers. And you see that they know Hebrew literature or biblical literature very well. And the way they talk to their people, they expect also their people to know the literature they refer to or allude to. So these guys were artists. They may have felt that they were divine messengers, but still, for me, the most important or interesting part is their creativity, poetry.
Well, if you read the Bible, Samuel basically anointed a king, Saul.
Yeah.
So he must have been a leader of the community because he had that ability. And the question is, why did the people at that time, were they Jewish or Hebrews? I'm not sure, but Hebrews. Why did they need?
Or Israelites?
They are right. They needed a king because the other neighborhood, so to speak, had a king. And if you read the literature, Saul and David and Solomon, there's some rough parts there.
Yeah, look, the Bible doesn't like the idea of kingship at all. It's very interesting. You start with the book of Genesis. In the book of Genesis, you see that all nations already have kings. When we are still a very young family, young couple, or actually an old couple, Abraham and Sarah, all other nations are fully developed already, Egypt and Assyria, and even the Philistines, according to the book of Genesis, and the Edomites, they all have kings. We don't have any leadership yet. And later on, when we leave Egypt, we get like the first leader, Moses, who is a prophet. And that's the kind of leadership that the Bible is fond of, not kings. But and there is one law in the Torah. There is only one law in the Torah in Deuteronomy 17 concerning a king. And actually it's a law that warns us against having a king and saying, well, if you do decide one day to have a king, at least make sure that he knows that he is not above the law, that he has to obey the law as any one of you. And then, of course, the people of Israel later on decide to have a king. Why do they decide to have a king? Because, as you said, all the other nations have one. If it's good for them, why isn't it good for us? But Samuel is against it. He objects to the idea of kingship because they say, well, the difference is that we have a king up in heaven. We don't need a human king. And then they decide to go for it, and they actually force Samuel to anoint a king. And God says, well, if they want it, let them have it. But again, all kings, or so almost all kings,
contradictory to the Bible.
Exactly, and that's why almost all kings are not, but the Bible is not very happy with them. Even with David, look, David, who starts very nicely, a young shepherd, an innocent kid, but look at his end. Actually, the story of David is a tragedy. Look at the first chapter of the book of Kings, the story about David's death. He is already an old man, sick man. He's cold, he's shivering. Nobody takes care of him. Neither of his many wives or his kids, they don't come to visit. His servants have to hire for him a young lady to keep him warm. And that's the tragedy, because in a way he was very successful. Of course, he founded Jerusalem, he conquered an empire, but as a human being, as a family man, he was a total failure. And then, of course, it continues with Solomon again. Starts very nicely, the smartest kid in the wise man. And yet, in his old age, he has these many wives, worships all their idols, another failure. And it keeps going on and on and on. Kingship is not the answer. But the interesting part is that when the Israelite prophets have their visions for the ideal future, they cannot imagine a future without a Davidic king. That's like the Messiah type.
Right.
So, because people are already used to it. They were used to a Davidic king for many centuries, so when they imagine the future, they need this component in the picture.
That's it. I've read that. That's sort of anti-Judaism, because what they're always trying to trace is something to a Davidic dynasty.
Yeah.
I think the Maccabees, and there was some trace there of everything was Davidic dynasty.
Yeah.
So in a sense, we're trying to continue a royalty.
Yes.
And that's anti the Bible, isn't it?
It is, but yeah, but that's human nature.
Go
I
fight
think,
City Hall,
I
huh?
think that people have this need for a king, for royalty. Look, in your country, in America, how crazy they got with Princess Di, Princess Di.
Right.
You know, she became the most important person. So many books have been written about her.
It's a human need.
It's a human need. But the prophets are very smart. When they create this picture, ideal picture of the future, they actually create a compromise. There will be a human king in the future, but he will understand
That he's below God.
Exactly, that he has no power of his own.
Okay, we got to cut for a break. We'll come right back, and this is fascinating material, and I'm sure that a lot of you don't read the Bible every night, so you might buy this tape and play it again.
In modern Middle East history, only one peace treaty has stood the test of time, the 1978 Camp David Accord. In the new documentary film, Backdoor Channels, The Price of Peace, learn the true story behind the greatest diplomatic achievement of our time and its lessons for the future.
The price of peace is very high to have this courageous man and my close friend killed.
Winner of the Telly Award for Best Cultural Program. Now available at select stores including Barnes & Noble and online at Amazon.com. Get the book that inspired the award-winning movie, Leon Charney's Backdoor Channels. Learn about the Backdoor Channel negotiations that led to the historic 1978 Israeli-Egyptian peace treaty. Become a witness to history and order Backdoor Channels online at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Also available at all other retailers and booksellers. Or download the audiobook at iTunes or Audible.com. Relive history. Order Backdoor Channels. Get best-selling author Leon Charney's latest book, The Battle of the Two Talmuds. Join Charney as he explores years of Jewish history to find out why and how Talmudic scholars and rabbis abandoned the Holy Land for the lands of the diaspora. Learn about the power struggles behind the creation of the Jerusalem and Babylonian Talmuds. It's a book critics call engaging and enlightening. A book which will be of interest to people of every faith. Now available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, or download the audiobook of The Battle of the Two Talmuds at iTunes or Audible.com.
Anywhere else, this would just be a museum. But this is Jerusalem, and these are the Dead Sea Scrolls, the oldest known biblical text and greatest archaeological find of modern times. And now they're in New York. See the Dead Sea Scrolls, Life and Faith in Biblical Times at Discovery Times Square on 44th Street. The wonders of Israel live in all of us. Come find the Israel in you.
Leon Charney sets out to discover the true meaning of the Kaddish, the Jewish custom of reciting a prayer to commemorate the death of a close relative. Join Charney as he finds out the history of the Kaddish and how it has evolved. Reviewed as a refreshing walk through Jewish history and a book that deserves to be read by both Jews and non-Jews, The Mystery of the Kaddish is now available online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all other retailers and booksellers. Or download the audiobook at Audible.com or on iTunes. Discover the Mystery of the Kaddish.
We're back. I'm Leon Charney. I'm talking to you from Mount Scopus in Jerusalem, Israel, at the Hebrew University campus with the very prominent Professor Yair Zakovitch, Professor of Bible. You hold the chair by a Japanese Christian sect. What's the name of that sect?
The name of the sect is Beit Shalom, the House of Peace.
Who are they?
Well, it was founded by the person after whom the chair is named, Father Takeji Otsuki, who's now about 97 years old, a very charismatic leader of a Christian sect, about 10,000 people in Japan. His mission in life is actually to take care and to help the Jewish people. They believe that the Jewish people have a role and that it's their job actually to help us. to help Jerusalem, and by the way, also to help the Hebrew University. And that's how they actually created this endowed chair in biblical studies here at the university.
Are they a religious group?
Oh, very religious. But it's amazing when you visit their churches, and I've been there already 3 times, you see more Jewish symbols in their churches than Christian
symbols. Would they be part of the lost tribes, or nobody knows?
No, no, no. They don't even claim to be part of the lost tribes. No, 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 no. They...
By the way, do you know what happened to all these lost tribes?
I think that they are not lost, that they have never been lost.
Really? Where are they?
Well, here. Well, you know, we have to actually to ask ourselves, how was this story about the 10 lost tribes created, and why was it created? Look, there is a story in the book of Kings that the 10 tribes were exiled by the king of Assyria. It's 2 Kings chapter 17. The 10 tribes were exiled. And the king of Assyria brought some population from, you know, his great empire to settle them here, because, of course, he didn't want the country to be desolated. And these guys who were settled here by the king of Assyria didn't know how to worship the local god, and they were devoured by lions. So they hired a priest or 2 to teach them how to worship the local god. And they didn't learn their lesson too well, so they were still idol worshippers. But actually it's a story, it's a polemic against Samaritans. Because what do the Samaritans claim? The Samaritans claim that they are the 10 tribes, that they have never been exiled. Of course, when you talk about an exile in the ancient period, well, they didn't have trains, they didn't have airplanes. You could not exile a whole population. You could just, you know, exile the leadership, and that's what was important, the generals, the high officials. But the farmers you left to cultivate the country. So most of the population was never exiled, just the leadership. But when the people of Judah, the Judahites, came back from Babylon, with Ezra and Nehemiah at the beginning of the Second Temple period, there was a conflict between them and the Samaritans. The Samaritans said, well, let us cooperate with you. We would like to build a temple with you. But the people who came back from Babylon didn't want to cooperate with these people. So they have created this story that the 10 tribes have been lost, and that the population we have here in the country has nothing to do with ancient Israelite.
You've heard it here. The tribes are not lost. So this is a scoop, I guess. When you go through the Bible, who are your heroes, basically?
Well, I don't have one hero, not even 2 heroes, because whenever I am interested in a person, let's say I was interested in David for a while, I wrote a book about David. I was interested in Elisha, I wrote some articles about Elisha or about Elijah. My interests change, and whenever they change, my heroes change. So it's not the people that are my heroes, it's the Bible, it's the literature that is my hero.
Why do people celebrate Elijah the prophet on Passover?
That's very interesting. Elijah, if you read the biblical stories about him in the book of Kings, he was a fanatic. He was not a person that you would have liked to meet in the middle of the night walking in the street. He was a scary guy, always punishing, always, you know, light or fire coming down from heaven to devour all the sinners. Very scary guy. But all of a sudden, in rabbinic literature already, you have a 180 degrees change, and he becomes this nice guy, almost like a Jewish Santa Claus.
A saint.
A saint. He helps us. Through history, you know, there are so many stories about Elijah, from the Second Temple period to Hasidic stories to modern stories that even are created nowadays. And the reason I think that Elijah has really changed is one tradition. Elijah never died. According to the Bible, he never died. He made it up to heaven, and he's still there. So he can be our lawyer or our representative up there. And, you know, the idea that a person made it, that one person didn't die, that's what we all, I believe, want to share with him, the experience of...
Any reason why they bring that at the Passover Seder?
The Passover Seder, I think that the reason is that Elijah, like Moses, is actually associated with the traditions of the desert of Sinai. The way we have a story, all the stories about Moses in Sinai, we have also one tradition in the book of Kings, 1 Kings chapter 19, about Elijah being there on Mount Horeb. So Elijah is in a way a second Moses. There are so many stories about Elijah which are very similar to the Moses stories, with one difference. Moses was kind. I'm talking now about the biblical tradition, not about the post-biblical ones. Moses was gentle. Moses was always our lawyer, always asked God to forgive us. While Elijah works for the DA, actually. He wants God to punish us. And God doesn't like it. And that's the greatest message of the Elijah story. Elijah stories. God is actually getting upset with Elijah for blaming the people of Israel. That's not the role of a prophet. The role of a prophet is actually not to be just God's representative on earth, but being also the people's representative up there.
Interesting. Do you see any difference between Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox as we have in America in the way they interpret the Bible?
Of course. But, you know, again, it's very difficult to put labels. But still, of course, the Reform and the Conservative, most of them are much more open-minded to the way, of course, we study the Bible, the critical way of reading.
By the way, you studied the Bible with the rabbi, didn't you?
Yeah, actually, my two great professors have been rabbis, both of them European.
Orthodox rabbis.
Orthodox rabbis who actually made it here to the country after the Holocaust. Both of them were Holocaust survivors, one from Hungary and the other one from Holland. And both of them were Orthodox rabbis, but yet very open-minded because they got also good European education. There is a great story about one of them, one of my professors who said, at the end of one of his classes, next week we'll prove, with God's help, that the Torah giving Mount Sinai never took place. And that tells you a lot about the person.
Okay, so how could he be Orthodox? Wouldn't he have to accept the concept that God gave the Torah to Moses?
In a way,
how did they combine that? It's fascinating. I think Professor Leibowitz did that also, didn't he?
For them, being Orthodox means or meant observing the law. You could.
But the law was created by whom?
The law is divine. The law is divine, but yet it was transmitted through human beings. It's human beings who wrote the Torah. The Torah was not written in the clouds, up in heaven. The Torah was written here by human beings. Human beings who believe that they understand or they can interpret God. But these guys, you know, my professors, have been open enough to the idea that actually you find contradictions in the Bible, that there are different interpretations of the divine word.
Isn't that the beauty of the Bible? That it's very open and very critical?
Yes.
I mean, Moses is not saintly. He committed sins. He hit the stone, and he wasn't allowed to enter Israel. He was punished.
That's the greatest message. That's the greatest message of the Bible. There are no perfect human beings.
That's right.
Yeah, and we should never worship human beings. You know, in Russia they worship Stalin.
I was just thinking about Marx. And,
yeah, exactly. But the Bible is totally against worshiping human beings because, of course, if you worship human being, then you forget about God. So and there is another reason for it. You know, what can you learn from a perfect person? Or at least I cannot learn anything from a perfect person because it's a different species. I'm not perfect. Well, I'm not happy to admit it, but I can tell it to you that I'm not perfect. So I can learn from people like me, human beings.
Reciting a prayer to commemorate the death of a close relative. Join Charney as he finds out the history of the Kaddish and how it has evolved. Reviewed as a refreshing walk through Jewish history and a book that deserves to be read by both Jews and non-Jews, The Mystery of the Kaddish is now available online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all other retailers and booksellers. Or download the audiobook at audible.com or on iTunes. Discover the mystery of the Kaddish.
We're back. I'm talking with Professor Yair Zakovitch, who's a professor of Bible. At one time was Dean of Humanities at Hebrew University. As a secularist, but he really believes in this Bible, and or our Bible, and he thinks it's the greatest piece of literature that's been written. I guess no one's ready to contradict it. Have you read the New Testament too?
Yeah, I'm reading the New Testament. Actually next semester I'm going to teach a class about the Old in the New. How actually our Bible, Hebrew Scripture, is interpreted by the New Testament.
Did you see the film by Mel Gibson?
I want to see it, but for some reason they don't show it in this country, so somehow I'll have to buy myself a tape. I really want to see it. But
We did some shows on it, and I did a show with Mario Cuomo, the former governor.
Oh.
He was highly critical, and he's a very religious Catholic. Many Jews in America got very upset about it.
I'm sure.
And what he talks about is a very fundamental sect of the Catholic religion. Do you know much about those people?
I know that Mel Gibson actually belongs to this sect. His father, who's, I guess, a real anti-Semite. And yeah. I was very upset by this whole story, but I cannot say anything about it until I really see the movie, and then I'll be happy to talk about it.
Can you trace anti-Semitism to the Bible?
No. Look, but already in the Bible you have some expressions of anti-Semitism. In literature that was written actually in exile, in the story of Esther. Actually, the story of Esther is the first story of anti-Semitism, because why is Haman, so suspicious of Mordechai? Because these people that Mordechai belongs to they're very different from all other peoples. They have different customs, so it makes them very suspicious. And of course, if this guy Mordechai is smart enough, and he has a job in the royal court, who knows what damage they can cause us. So let's make sure that they all suffer, or that we eliminate them. And then in the book of Daniel, you have again very similar stories to the story of Esther. So it all starts there, actually.
So it emanates way back.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Is it because we think we're the chosen people?
I don't know if we think we are the chosen people. I don't think that I'm a member of a chosen people. I am very happy and very proud, being a Jew. But people, people misunderstand what it means to be the chosen people. People think that being a member of this prestigious club gives you some rights or extra rights. But actually, it's the opposite. If God chooses you, He has more demands to you than He has to others.
You have to perform greater.
You have to perform much, much better, exactly. And we have to satisfy Him and His demands. So I think it's not very healthy to come up again and again with this idea that we are the chosen people. We are not smarter, we are not better, we have to work hard in order to be better. And we have a great culture, and we have to be proud of our culture the way the British should be proud of their culture, or the French should be proud of their own culture. But
how are these, let's say the Gamliels, who wrote the Mishnah, which is part of the books after the Torah? There was a Mishnah and a Talmud for my non-Jewish audience. How are these rabbis so clever to create this book and know that it could replace the temple? Where did it come from?
First of all, it's not an effort, it's not a project created by one person. No, it's a collective project, and it's the group. But it was
brilliant.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant, and it shows you how healthy this society was. You face a challenge, you face a calamity, a disaster, a catastrophe, and slowly, many smart people together, they get together and they come up with a solution. It's amazing.
It is. I mean, for 5,000 years.
Yeah, and the healthiest part is, look at the Bible. The Bible was written thousands of years ago. And how do we keep this book alive? how do we keep this book relevant for our lives? Because we reinterpret, we reinterpret, and every generation creates its own midrash, is midrashizing on this text, is reinterpreting it, it's in our genes, actually, the need to interpret or to reinterpret the Bible. And if you look at rabbinic literature, from Mishnah to the Talmud to the different midrashim, and then to medieval Jewish literature, they always go back to the sources. They always read the old text, but they always come up with something new about these texts. And that's the secret of our existence.
And the brilliance is that this same book is read in different countries by Jewish people. It's consistent. So you go to synagogue, you may have a different interpretation, but for sure you'll find a Torah or a Bible.
And that's what, again, it's the texts that make us keep us one people. It's the text that keep us one people. We read the same text, we talk the same language, we have the same associations.
Are young people interested in Bible today in this country?
Look, we have a problem, and we got to admit it, because of the polarization we mentioned earlier. Polarization within the Israeli society between the ultra-Orthodox and the secular people. And this polarization, which is not very healthy, brings many young secular, so-called secular Jews to say, well, if they claim for a monopoly over Judaism, let them have it. We are not interested in it anymore. And that's a tragedy, and that's what I am and my colleagues too, we are trying to fight. We want to show the younger generation that the Bible is theirs, that Jewish literature, Jewish tradition, Jewish culture is theirs. They shouldn't give it up. It's the greatest treasure in the world, and one should not give it up easily. And we would like younger people to study this culture, to appreciate it, to love it. And for that, we need good teachers, of course. And here, actually in this building, where we are sitting right now, the Yitzhak Rabin building of Jewish Studies, we have a special program in which we train now a new type of teachers for the Israeli high school system, a new type of teachers of Jewish studies, and we hope to start with these people, to start actually a revolution that will bring the Israeli people back to the sources.
Is it your belief that they could have a constitution in this country?
Not in my lifetime, I'm afraid. I'm afraid that it's too late now. We have too many political parties, each party is pulling it into its own direction, so I'm afraid we cannot have it right now. I'm very sad about it. I would have liked us to have a constitution, and I would have liked to see what you have in the US, actually, the separation of state and religion. Unfortunately, in this country, we don't have it, and it's really bad.
Okay, how do you see the Bible in terms of the Palestinian issue today?
Well, look, you know that in this country, again, there are many different ways to read the Bible. I read the Bible, and for me, I have great memories, not personal memories, but literary memories from Bethlehem and Shechem and all these places. But I know that right now, the Arabs live there, and I may have to give these territories back, and I would like, to have peace, and then I can go and visit these places even if I don't sit there. Some other Jews believe that, well, this is our country, has been promised us by God, and we should not give even one, square centimeter of this territory back to the Palestinians. So unfortunately, we all read the same Bible, but we still have very different political concepts. And what's interesting, actually, to follow now is what happens with the Palestinian interpretation of the Bible. They would like to believe that it's all, a story, nothing to do with reality. We have never been here. It's not our country. They are the Canaanites. They are the original inhabitants of this country. So yeah, the Bible still plays a role in this country, in the political life of this country.
When one goes into the Israeli army, are they obligated to study the Bible?
No, they're not obligated to study Bible, but every soldier gets a copy of the Bible. And of course, there is an educational system in the army, and of course they teach the Israeli soldier about our history, about our heritage, about this country, about this history. They have a lot of field trips to all these important places, but they don't force you to study it, no.
In reading the Bible, did the Bible create sin?
I don't think that the Bible creates sin. The human beings create sins, you know, and human beings sin. But the Bible has its concepts, and again, concepts in plural of sin, of course. The Bible, the way the Bible puts it, it's God who defines what sin is. Human beings need some authority. They need structure, they need an authority to tell them the difference between right and wrong.
It's interesting that you told me that 2 of your doctoral students are Orthodox Jews.
Oh yeah, even more than that, yeah. Oh yeah.
And they're really interested in getting to understand the Bible through a secular professor.
Yeah, for us in the department, it's again, we have secular professors, we have Orthodox professors, and we actually are never aware of the fact that one is a secular and the other one is an Orthodox, because we all know our sources and we are all open-minded, and so are our students. If people are coming to study with us at the Hebrew University, they have to be open-minded. And I like these Orthodox students of mine very much. First of all, they are talented, they are enthusiastic, and they come to the university with great knowledge of our Jewish sources. Some of them, you know, go through a yeshiva education, so they have good basis in Jewish studies, and then they get here open-minded and study with us. So the combination of great knowledge and being open-minded promises a great career in biblical studies.
All right, let's talk about 2 great names in Jewish history or philosophy modern. One was Martin Buber. What was Martin Buber?
Unfortunately, I'm too young, so I didn't know Martin Buber. I, of course, read his books, and I'm very fond of his writings. But he was actually a professor of sociology at this university.
Is that right?
Yeah. He was not a professor of Jewish studies, actually, but of course all his
He became very famous for it.
Oh, he's so very famous, and even nowadays, and people all over the world are still reading his books. In Germany, in the United States, people study, people write dissertations about Martin Buber, and I'm still assigning my students to read some of his articles about biblical studies, and I like his collection of Hasidic stories. I like them so very much. It's a great collection. And I believe that, and actually he also wrote one great novel that I like very much. He was a great scholar, a great man, and a great name for this university, yeah.
And Professor Leibowitz, we spoke about before.
Yeah, Professor Leibowitz, I had I was lucky enough to know him. He was a walking encyclopedia, and actually he was the editor general of the Encyclopedia Ivrit, of the Hebrew Encyclopedia, and he knew so much about so many different subjects. He was a professor at the School of Medicine, but that was...
Is that right?
Yeah, but that was not his claim to fame. His claim to fame was his knowledge of Jewish studies, his knowledge of Jewish philosophy, and but yet he was not a professor that, you know, sat in his studies and did his writings. He was preaching, and he was, in a way, he was a prophet. And he was actually an anti-establishment person, and he fought all our politicians from right to left. And
he also predicted the morass that's going on now, didn't he?
Oh yeah, and he pretty in a relatively early stage, after the 6 Days War, after 1967, he actually realized and claimed that having these territories is going to be a disaster. But nobody listened to him.
You know who else said that? Abba Eban on, we talked about it on my show, in '67, after there was such euphoria in this country,
Wow.
after winning all these territories,
sure.
Eban was the really, in a sense, a prophet, and he said, we can't occupy so much territory.
Sure. Abba Eban was a great guy.
All right, we're running out of time, Professor, and we're looking for heroes. Everybody always looks for a hero, so you got to name a hero if you can, or you have too many to call heroes. Name the greatest prophet.
Well, again, I like all biblical prophets, but my greatest hero is not a biblical character. My greatest hero is David Ben-Gurion.
We'll finish that show on Professor Yair Leibovitz. Yair Leibovitz. Wow, look what I'm doing to this poor man.
Good. I'm flattered.
Professor Yair Zakovitch. It's really imperative that if you're of the Jewish religion or race or whatever it is, you should really read the Bible and understand it, and then you can make judgments for yourself. And I think if we all did that, we'd probably have a better world. We'll see you next week.
In modern Middle East history, only one peace treaty has stood the test of time, the 1978 Camp David Accord. In the new documentary film, Backdoor Channels, The Price of Peace, learn the true story behind the greatest diplomatic achievement of our time and its lessons for the future.
The price of peace is very high to have this courageous man and my close friend killed.
Winner of the Telly Award for Best Cultural Program. Now available at select stores including Barnes & Noble and online at Amazon.com. Get the book that inspired the award-winning movie, Leon Charney's Backdoor Channels. Learn about the Backdoor Channel negotiations that led to the historic 1978 Israeli-Egyptian peace treaty. Become a witness to history and order Backdoor Channels online at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Also available at all other retailers and booksellers. Or download the audiobook at iTunes or Audible.com. Relive history. Order Backdoor Channels.
Endless pools are an incredible alternative to traditional pools, making it easy and inexpensive to swim at home. Call our toll-free number or visit our website for a free idea kit. Endless pools are simple to install, easy to maintain, and economical to run. Swim or exercise against a smooth current that adjusts to any speed or ability. Perfect for year-round health, fitness, and relaxation. Call our toll-free number or visit our website for your free Endless Pools idea kit.
Get best-selling author Leon Charney's latest book, The Battle of the Two Talmuds. Join Charney as he explores years of Jewish history to find out why and how Talmudic scholars and rabbis abandoned the Holy Land for the lands of the diaspora. Learn about the power struggles behind the creation of the Jerusalem and Babylonian Talmuds. It's a book critics call engaging and enlightening. A book which will be of interest to people of every faith. Now available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, or download the audiobook of The Battle of the Two Talmuds at iTunes or Audible.com.
Anywhere else, this would be a vacation on the Mediterranean. But here, it's also a journey into history. From modern Tel Aviv to the ancient cities of Herod, the Romans, the Crusaders. The history of Israel lives in all of us. Come find the Israel in you.
Leon Charney sets out to discover the true meaning of the Kaddish, the Jewish custom of reciting a prayer to commemorate the death of a close relative. Join Charney as he finds out the history of the Kaddish and how it has evolved. Reviewed as a refreshing walk through Jewish history and a book that deserves to be read by both Jews and non-Jews, The Mystery of the Kaddish is now available online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all other retailers and booksellers. Or download the audiobook at Audible.com or on iTunes. Discover The Mystery of the Kaddish.